Trust you. I don't
Another state. I'm trying to eat down a whole nother plate. Seem like my homies was stuck in the hood. I just told them be safe in the state.
What's good? What's good? What's good? Host 2 Black. We are here to honor the great Glen Ford. Normally we have a scheduled program on this day. Normally we do the last 2 weeks of the month, either on a Wednesday or Tuesday. And we had a program scheduled today. And as I was actually exporting the episode for today, I got the sad news about Glen Ford's passing. I know maybe some people on the channel may not be aware of who Glen Ford is. If not, that's unfortunate. But he's the founder of one of the co-founders, of Black Agenda Report. Is a press team journalist. I will read his bio here shortly. But today we just want to honor him. So I'm going to be joined here soon with the editors of Hood Communist. And I think it's poetic that we'll be having Hood Communists on, considering that they follow in the lineage of Black Agenda Report. It's a younger crew following in a different era of politics, but advancing this similar analysis. And for many of us who are, early 30s, late 20s, even late 40s, we found ourselves on an island in many cases in regards to, Black politics, if we weren't really with the kind of liberal Obama establishment. And I know for me personally, Glen Ford, I learned so much just by reading Black Agenda Report, describing Obama as the more effective evil, and really just saved me from going down a lot of bad loopholes that a lot of us get caught up in and we have to unlearn later on in life. I really thank Glen Ford and Black Agenda Report, Bruce Dixon, Margaret Kimberly, all of them for that. So we don't have anything super planned. We're just gonna sit here. We're gonna share our thoughts and have a conversation about the impact that Glen Ford and Black Agenda Report has had on our political lives, on our personal lives, on our views, on our perspectives. So I'm gonna bring Hood Communist on shortly. I'm just gonna read his bio. He actually has a very extensive bio, and we once actually had him on the podcast actually a year ago before we were on Black Power Media, back for Black August. And the myth was Democratic Party politics is Black politics. That was the myth. And it's funny because actually we had scheduled to talk about the myth being we're not our ancestors, another stupid ass myth. It was right after Kwame Ture it was right after Bill Clinton took shots at Kwame Ture in the at John Lewis's funeral. And so we brought him on to talk about that, and then we just had a more extensive conversation about the Democratic Party, and just through his analysis, we formed that myth. Like, I remember putting that after I uploaded the episode, I wrote out that was the myth because he had just broke it down so well. But I remember when reading the bio, he was a very humble person. He didn't want you to read his whole bio, but when you read his whole bio, which I'm going to give him the justice to read the whole thing, it's very extensive. I don't think a lot of people know how long he's been in the game and how many things he's been a part of. So I'm just going to read it, and then I'm going to bring on the editors from Hood Communist. So Black Agenda Report was founded in 2006 by Glen Ford, Bruce Dixon, rest in peace, and Margaret Kimberly and Letitia Stills of CBC Monitor. They left Black Commentator, which was also co-founded by Glen Ford, and he edited that since 2002. And then they launched Black Agenda Report in 2006. So the bio on the website is historic first, most, and onlys are the hallmarks of Glen Ford's long career. The son of a famed disc jockey, Rudy the Deuce Rutherford, the first Black man to host a non-gospel television show in the Deep South, Columbus, Georgia, 1958. Glenn was reading Newswire copy on air at age 11. Glenn's first time full-time broadcast news job was at James Brown's Augusta, Georgia radio station WRDW in 1970, where the Godfather of Soul shortened Glenn's surname to Ford. Glen Ford worked as a newsman at four more local stations in Columbus, Georgia, Atlanta, Baltimore, where he created his first radio syndication, a half-hour weekly news program called Black World Report, in Washington, D.C. In 1974, Ford joined the Mutual Black Network, 88 stations, where he served as a Capitol Hill State Department and White House correspondent and Washington Borough chief, while also producing a daily radio commentary. In 1977, Ford co-launched, produced, and hosted America's Black Forum, the first nationally syndicated Black news interview program on television. ABF made Black broadcast history. For the first 4 years, the program generated national and international headlines nearly every week. Never before and never since had a Black news entity commanded the weekly attention of the news services, AP, UPI, Reuters, Agency France Presse, even TASS, the Soviet news agency, and the broadcast networks. While still host and co-owner of ABF, Ford in 1969 created Black Agenda Reports, so you can see the origins, which provided 5 programs each day on Black women, history, business, sports, entertainment to 66 radio stations. The syndication produced more short-form programming than 2 existing Black radio networks combined. Ford also produced McDonald's-sponsored radio history, Black History Through Music, aired on 50 stations nationwide. In 1987, Ford launched Wrap It Up, the first nationally syndicated hip-hop music show broadcast on 65 stations during its 6 years of operations. Wrap It Up allowed Ford to play an important role in the maturation of a new African-American musical genre. He organized 3 national rap music conventions and wrote the hip-hop column Jack the Rapper's Black Radio Trade magazine. Yeah, I don't think a lot of us knew about his hip-hop background. Ford co-founded blackcommentator.com in 2002. The weekly journal quickly became the most influential Black political site on the net. In October 2006, Ford and the entire writing team left BC to launch blackagendareport.com. In addition to his broadcast and internet experience, Glen Ford was a national political columnist for the Encore American and Worldwide News magazine, founded the Black Commentator and Africana Policies magazine, authored The Big Lie, an analysis of U.S. media coverage of the Grenada invasion in 1985, voiced over 1,000 radio commercials, half of which he also produced, and scores of television commercials, served as a reporter, editor for 3 newspapers. Ford was a founding member of Washington chapter of National Association of Black Journalists, executive board member of National Alliance of Third World Journalists, media specialist for National Minority Purchasing Council, and has spoken at scores of colleges and universities. So as y'all can see, or at least as y'all can hear, he has a very, very extensive resume, and I'm sure that was only a bite size of all the different things he's been involved in. So I'm going to go ahead now and bring on the editors of Hood Communist. What's good?
Hey.
Hello, greetings.
What's good? Yeah, thanks for being on, especially in such short notice, both of you, and I know Mac's going to be joining us soon. But I'm going to let y'all introduce yourselves. For those who don't know Hood Communists, I've written a few pieces for them. It's dope publication, and like I said at the beginning, is within the lineage of Black Agenda Report, just carrying on that tradition, particularly maybe for a younger audience, but even those of us who are younger, a lot of us read Black Agenda Report because, like I said earlier, really wasn't nothing else to read if you had a certain political orientation. So I'm gonna let y'all take the stage. Again, thanks for being on here.
Yeah, well, I'm Erica or Ricky, and most of you know me. I am an editor of Hood Communist. I am on the coordinating committee of Black Alliance for Peace, and I also a member of the Human People's Progress Party, and I founded Liberation Through Reading.
Greetings. My name is Ajamu Umi, and I'm an editor for Hood Communists, and I'm also an organizer for the All African People's Revolutionary Party.
Thank you. As I keep saying, and I talked to Erica about this a little bit. I know Hood Communist has takes some of its origins from Black Agenda Report. So could you speak more specifically to that and just what were some of those influences?
Yeah, in the beginning, before we even launched, a lot of the beginning meetings about what we wanted Hood Communists to look like was inspired by Black Agenda Report. Just in that vein, we wanted to target a younger audience, like the youth, who had some criticism about what Black Agenda Report was doing, or took some, like, they were definitely inspired and definitely learned a lot, but didn't really have the language that we felt that was necessary that maybe Hood Communists can bring, and that was a void in a space that we thought that we could fill, and we take a lot of our inspiration behind Black Agenda Report. Like I mentioned earlier, I don't think that I could have even come to identifying identity reductionism if he didn't name Black Miss Leadership class.
Hmm.
So I do feel like I am like deeply, deeply not so much inspired, but a lot of my work is influenced by a lot of the work that Glen Ford has done to just kind of pull back the veil of that Miss Leadership class and just name it.
Yeah, I would just add that, it's the African continuum, right? I mean, if you go back to Du Bois and Marcus Garvey, Amy Jock Garvey, and the writings, all of these independent voices that are trying to give our people a lane of dignity. And I think, Black Agenda Report is obviously a part of that continuum and has made and continues to make a major contribution. I mean, I've been able to publish a few things in there over the years. And, certainly what we're trying to do with Hood Communist is another part of that continuum. And it's something that we really need as a people.
Yeah, it's definitely something we're going to need for a while. Looks like, but yeah, I think when I first saw Communist, I don't remember when exactly it came across. When I actually sat down to read it, because the name was, like I've told y'all before, the name was interesting off top. Like, that's interesting. I want to see what they're talking about. But like, even once I read it, it definitely felt like it was in that tradition, because it's very stripped down and to the point. Very much, like how Black Agenda Report is just set up, even as a website. But I just think about, like, I guess, the vacuum that is filled when there's just not much of when, like we were saying, the perspectives that you're looking for just aren't really out there. And I guess I'm just curious if we could just talk about that, because I think a lot of people gravitate to Black Agenda Report for that reason, for various political differences, but they still gravitated towards it for that reason, because I think most of Black media is consumed, particularly under the Obama years. And, they found it in 2006. So this is just right before Obama takes off, right when he's starting to, gain visibility. Like, what is it that draws people to something like that?
Yeah, my first introduction to bar was around that time. Like, I think everyone who is finding themselves sort of in that radical space can attribute a lot of that to bar. As you drift away from the Democratic Party, there's less and less avenues for us as the Black left, or whatever that can be or should be or could look like. And Black Agenda Report was definitely the avenue that people landed. I know for sure that was my first wake up to, okay, so Obama really isn't shit. Like the reporting on Libya, especially. And it really alerted me that, a lot of the Black left has no idea what's going on in Africa, because there's no conversation around it. There is more now, but in 2012, 2013, definitely was not. So I think that's a lot of the reasons why Libya could have happened and did happen, because there was no actual reporting on it, not in the ways that Black Agenda Report was doing it. And I think that really push me further.
Mm.
Yeah, I think it's really my perspective is probably a little different because I was never in the Democratic or Republican Party, and
Right.
never. I mean, I went from student activism right to revolutionary organizing, which really, what you said to Black about being on an island, that really resonated with me because that's been my whole life, and you get used to it. But
Right.
it really has created where I really appreciate our people that try to give an independent report. And even though, like, Black Agenda Report, it's not always going to be, I mean, my views are extremely radical. So pretty much everything is not always going to be what I want it to be, but I still have a
Mm.
respect and appreciation for what they're doing because they've always maintained that anti-imperialist perspective. Like we talk about the Obama years, like a lot of us get caught up in that sentimentality and symbolic progress. And we lose sight of the fact that we're in an empire, or we never knew, that we're in an empire and we're fighting to destroy an empire. And so I always appreciate, any perspective that's trying on some level to maintain that dignified position that, we don't have to kowtow to the master. We can stand up and speak in our own voice. And so I appreciate, Black Agenda Report for making a major contribution to our ability to do that.
Yeah, because I mean, to the point about the island, like, I mean, for me, I started reading in high school. A friend of mine put me on. That's why I say it was a good timing, because by the time I get to college, like, I'm in college, like, right during the Obama years, like when he's running for president and when he becomes president. So it was interesting. I really was on an island, but a lot of times my arguments were based on what I read in Black Agenda Report. Like when I was arguing with like everybody in my class, like it was based on, whatever I was reading in there. And I guess I respect the, like you were saying, also being on the island, just the fact that they were willing to take that stand. Because I mean, there really was, you had hell to pay if you didn't tote that line. I remember that time very well. Like you had hell to pay if you didn't tote the pro-Obama line. And even some quote unquote radicals during that time, rest in peace, like Amiri Baraka and so forth. It was a lot of fighting going on. I remember when Glen Ford did a debate, and I think it was in Harlem. And about is Obama good for Black people or something of that nature. But he always stood tall. I mean, he destroyed Michael Eric Dyson twice. 2008, 2012 on Democracy Now! Like he always stood tall. And I think it wasn't just like, yeah, we could disagree on maybe certain points here and there, but I think it was also, I just respected the courage of the man, because like there was no like standing back or like, well, I'm gonna like fold because he went hard. And I was listening to an interview that we did with him, and I was listening to some of the outtakes, and I was telling somebody in that one of my co-hosts, I was like, when Cornel West broke from the party and was making all his criticisms, he didn't have nowhere else to go. And all of a sudden I started seeing him on Black Agenda Report, because there was nowhere else to really like get heard. White folks wasn't really fucking with him. And we already know how the Black press was doing. And then so I'm saying it was a place to go to at least get an outlet. It was one of the few places. I don't want to say it was the only place. That's not particularly fair, but it was one of the few places I think we could go and hear something else, and it wasn't just Obama or just anti-Obama or whatever. Like you said, the anti-imperialist message was strong, because that's another part about liberalism, is there's just no focus at all on anything that happens outside of the borders, like nothing. So it challenged me, because I grew up in the tradition of just focusing on the states. So this site also has always challenged me to focus on what's happening around the whole diaspora, right? Because it just, whether it was Libya, I remember I got in an argument with the professor, because he tried to, it was his back when in Somalia, when Somalia had that the fisherman crisis or whatever, and they were demonizing all the fishermen. And I got into a whole argument with my like geology professor about this. And what did I use to argue? I used Black Agenda Report articles, because they were one of the few people who reported on this story, and that's the only reason I even knew to have that argument, right? Because I'm saying they were the only ones, so a lot of times the stuff or organizations I was involved with, I was prepared to be that person that was kind of similar to Glen Ford. Like, I'm just going to get on everybody's nerves, and that's fine. But Glen Ford kind of, made that example for me. So that's why doing this is really close to my heart, because like he really, was groundbreaking for just, a lot of the stuff that I've been involved in throughout my lifetime. So yeah.
Yeah. But I think he encouraged it too, right?
Yeah.
Like the whole point was that he wanted people to get out there and talk about the Blackness Leadership class and call it and name it. Um, so I don't think, any of it was in vain. Um, because I can talk about so many people that I know personally who has shifted, not just because of Bar, but just listening to him speak. The first time I actually got to like meet him, and it was briefly because it was at Black Lives for Peace. It was the second anniversary in 2019, and it was at Plymouth Church in DC, and he was one of the keynote speakers. And that was the first time I got to like hear him speak, because I've always like read his work, but I never got to hear him speak. And he wasn't the biggest man, but like that voice was powerful and that speech was powerful, and Jaribu opened for him, so so it was really. And what he talked about too was the first time I ever heard this. He told a story, and one of the things he said when he opened, it was just like the beauty of elders is that we remember these things. And he was talking about '68, and he was in the military then, and I think he was in one of the in Virginia, station of Virginia. And they called him out after King died, everybody to go to DC. And he just talked about how the way that, all the Black military officers was just like, nah, we're not about to shoot at our people. We're not doing it. And everybody, and they started like literally turning on cops and like other like white officers. And he was just like, and that was the beginning of the end of the draft. Like, that's when they was like, all right, that's enough. Like, it's not going to work out. And it was just like little anecdotes like that I could appreciate. That because he was really a storyteller. He had a lot of stories. He told a lot of, because he was there. You read that bio. That bio was intensive, and I didn't know half of that shit until like today. Looking into trying to write about him. Just not based on what I know, but just give a full like history and a complete tribute. And then I was like, wow, I didn't even know half of these things. Like, I heard things here and there. I knew about him being on radio, because he's on radio now. He interviewed me for Black Agenda Radio, I want to say 2019 or maybe the end of 2018, about liberation through reading. And he called me, in fact, and I was like, because that voice. Yep. So I was like, nah, this is not Glen Ford calling me, like, how you get this number? And, he was just basically like, I've been hearing about you. And I was just so honored, because it's like, Glen Ford been hearing about me? Like, what they been saying? And he asked me if I wanted to come on and talk about the program, and I was just so grateful. And even if you listen to it now, like, I'm so incredibly nervous. And he made it so easy, because he's so chill and so laid back. And then even afterwards, we talked about Ujima and just Baltimore politics but I was just so incredibly nervous, because like, it's Glen Ford. That's all I kept. That's all that kept going in my mind. Like, don't mess this up. Like, it's Glen Ford. But yeah, so those, I'm very grateful to have like those little run-ins and those little moments with him, because I never got that with Bruce Dixon. And I joined Black Alliance for Peace the year that he had passed. So I never really got any connection or any chance to meet Bruce Dixon, who also was like a legend, so yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, listening to Erica, that I think one of the things I think is really important that we do is like, we have these outstanding people that make contributions to our forward progress, and then none of us are going to be here together, or forever rather. So the question becomes, what do we do when this happens? And I just believe that the best way to pay tribute to someone is to continue their work. And so that's a major void. We don't have Glen Ford anymore, but we have millions of people who have skills who can contribute to waking our people and humanity up. So, I just think it's important to encourage people, if you're thinking about writing, you're writing something you don't know, just continue to do that. Continue to get it out there. Secretary says, bad organization is better than none. So whatever you have to say, if you put it out there, that can't make things worse. It can only make things better. So, I hope people can, think of this like that. Like, okay, now I'm going to take that as my cue to step in that void and try to, we can't feel anybody's shoes, someone like Glen Ford, but we can make all of us make our own contribution, and we can begin to, help people understand the way he did what's going on and the things that we need to do to improve our situation.
Yeah, most definitely. So your one of your other editors has joined, so I'm gonna bring Mac on, get some perspective. What's good, man? What's up? What's
Hey,
up?
Bill.
You on mute?
Hey, y'all. I'm sorry I'm late.
No, you good? Yeah, we just chatting. So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna ask you some of the same questions, and we'll just keep the conversation moving forward. But if I can remember the questions I even asked y'all, but but no, I was just like, we were talking about, first of all, how Hood Communist is carrying in the tradition of of Black Agenda Report, and we were also talking about how for a lot of us who are left at the very least of the Democratic Party, or further radical, are often find ourselves on an island, particularly once Obama began to rise. So I was just curious to get your take on those things, and also particularly how it relates to communists.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was have y'all already talked about the episode that y'all did on Black politics?
I talked about it at the opening a little bit, but we could probably get to some more of it. But go ahead if you want to touch on it.
No, I just wanted to say, we were writing in the chat this morning, Hood Comments, we were just talking about how kind of Black Agenda Report very much does feel like a parent kind of site, like a parent sort of organization or body in terms of like the way that Hood Communist kind of moves, and like having that ability to see radical left African Black media, take principal positions throughout the years. I think one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about lately, and I think it's kind of been in a very sort of sensitive and like sweet spot for me, is how sort of anti-imperialist positions aren't just like the right thing to do. They just aren't like politically correct. They're not even like just like morally correct for African people. I think that they are like, it is a spiritual practice. It should be in your DNA to be anti-imperialist, especially if you're an African person in the United States. And I feel like over the past few months, as we've been looking at Palestine, as we've been looking at Cuba, as we've been looking at Venezuela, China, like all these things going on around the world, there's been this like really intense pressure and focus, I feel like, on young radical Africans in the US who are trying to take the anti-imperialist position. Just the amount of hate that you get online, for pushing back and saying like, maybe now is not the time to raise your criticisms of the Cuban Revolution, or for just trying to, speak on China from like a scientifically socialist perspective, from a scientific socialist perspective, and defend China in a lot of ways, and push back on this idea that China is not colonizing Africa. You get so much sort of like heat for that in 2021 still, and it can be overwhelming sometimes. And there have been days where I've definitely felt very beat up for taking those positions, but I have to remind myself, like, imagine being our elders trying to take anti-imperialist position. Like, imagine what SNCC was dealing with, taking the anti-imperialist position on Palestine, And so I say all that to say, I have so much respect and love for my elders who were taking the position that was critical of Barack Obama when he first hit the scene. I know that wasn't easy. I know niggas was mad about that. You know, and to know that I got and elders and now ancestors, of course, who've been pushing this critical African politic in the US forever. It's something that it gives you like the will to push. Like I know I have to keep fighting. So that's what I wanted to say.
Right. Right. No, right on. No, I believe that. I think that's very true. That like a lot of that pushes us to continue because it's really like we get accused of supporting genocide. You know, that's a lot to hold. Like that's a lot to hold. So I'm deeply appreciative to know that there's been people who's been doing this for decades and holding that consistency, and it's good to see that it's been consistent because not many have. You know, there are elders who have not been consistent, and you know, who are steering a lot of us in different directions. And but you know, I feel like Bar sets that tone that says, you know, you can continue to do it. And I feel like that's what Hood Communists is doing. Like, no, we're gonna continue to carry this torch, and we're gonna bust through. And you know, because that's the correct line and that's the principal position. Um, you know, it's a lot of noise, and I think that what Barr exemplified then and what her communist exemplifies now is that we are out organized and out propagandized, and these spaces are necessary. And I think that BPM is an extension of that as well, because many of the people who are on BPM are extensions of Barr. So you know,
Yeah, I mean, I learned literally. I mean, I've joked about it on our podcast when we had Dr. Ball on because I remember I told Dr. Ball I was mad at him when he first wrote the Myth of Black Buying Power because I had never heard that before. So I was like mad, like because I wasn't ready. You know, I got over it obviously, but I first read that and he first published that on Black Agenda Report. Like that was the first time he ever published anything about that, and now you see where that's gone. And I think even on that point, and that was the thing that Black Agenda Report, I didn't always agree with everything. I didn't always like everything I read, but I always had to wrestle with it. And I think that's another thing I appreciated. Like especially when Glen Ford wrote something, even if you didn't agree, like he always did his research. He always had his facts to back up what he had to say. It was always a well-structured argument. So you could take it or leave it. I remember when they first, I remember first Glen Ford was happy about Black Lives Matter. Then they started, watching how things was going down. They were one of the first people to come out with the critique. Both him and Bruce Dixon came out with a critique. So it's just like, I remember when I first read that, I wasn't ready for that. But again, like they always made you wrestle with a certain politic, whether you liked it or not. And they had no problem criticizing Black people, particularly, and then from the class angle. That's how, like, Erica, you brought up the Black misleadership class. Like, that's something I hear used by people, even white folks. I've heard white leftists use that term and not attribute it to anyone. But that's a term that I hear used often by everyone who never will say they act like they've never read a Black Agenda Report article, let alone Glen Ford. But like, that I like for me when I was into Malcolm X heavy around that time when I first got around to the Black Agenda Report, and I felt like it was like a modern. It was like I learned all this stuff about Malcolm X from back in the day, and it was like this was a modern way of like understanding his politics. It's like the Black misleadership class is very much an extension of Malcolm's message to the grassroots speech and his distinction of house Negro and field Negro and break. Like it's very much an extension of that, but it was a more modern way to understand it. And like they never had a problem coming for anybody. Like they still don't have a problem doing that. But Glenn set that tone. And again, like I said, it was always well defended, whether I liked it or not. I always had to walk away and at least consider what he said. And I think that as writers, y'all can speak to that, on Hood Comments, but I think writers, publishers, like I think sometimes that's the best you can ask is that at least people consider the argument. Yeah. You may not sway everybody on everything. You may not even be right every time, but at least people were willing to consider that argument. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think that's absolutely right. And, I mean, I'm looking at this like I'm older. You know, I'll be 60 years old next year. And the reason why I say that is because one of the things that capitalism does is it wears you down gradually over time. That's what capitalism and imperialism do to each and every one of us. And I remember George Padmore in the Pan Africanism or Communism, that classic book, he talks about revolutionary at 20, moderate at 30, conservative at 40, reactionary at 50. And that's real because people, you know, the system is telling you, well, you should have done this by now. You should have that. You should. And if you don't have this, then you're a failure and there's something wrong with you. And, you know, virtually everybody I know in my age range, they struggle with that. And the only reason why I don't and never will is because I have a pretty strong understanding of who I am, who the hell I am, and what I'm doing in this backward society. And so I think that that's why, like, what Black Agenda Report does, what Black Power Media does, Hood Communists, all of these independent voices do is it's telling us, like you said, Glen Ford, like you said too, Glen Ford always came with a strong argument. And that's essential for us to pay attention to that, because the more skilled we become at developing an analysis and being able to present it, the better position we'll be to stomach whatever the system throws at us. And I was talking to Salifu and Erica and Onyesamu, our other member, the other day, and I was telling them, like, I've seen all kind of people. They started out revolutionary, and now they're preachers and doing. I mean, all kind of people, all kind of stuff has happened, right? The most militant people. So I think what you're saying and what we're saying is essential, because the more we develop this and the more we keep putting this analysis out there, that is the foundation that will keep us focused in the positive direction that we need to be in.
Yeah.
I think something else that I want to say, I also want to say shout out to Margaret Kimberly as well, for all the things and all the work that she's put in at Black Agenda Report. Everybody that says this, but yeah, when Glen Ford laid out an argument, if he's not gonna do nothing else, he gonna stack some citations for you, as if to tell you, don't argue with me, argue with the sources. And that's fine. I will argue with your sources. Like you said too, Black, if I don't necessarily agree, I'll argue with sources, but I feel like that's such a incredible model for how, like, in 2021 and beyond, radical or revolutionary African media needs to behave. I know Black Mist Podcast talks about this in terms of how y'all would like to think about debate, but we need to be talking about ideas, not each other, not people. And one of the things that I think that's one of the things that Glen Ford was really good at, because he was Black Agenda Report positioned itself as this credible, radical, and still does. I'm not talking about it in past tense because it's still going, but Black Agenda Report positions itself as this alternative to what you can get in the mainstream every day. And they didn't just go the complete opposite direction and say, we're never going to engage with what y'all got going on. We're never going to engage with your sources. No, we're going to engage with all your stuff. We're going to prove our points. We're going to use your sources. We're going to use your publications, your research journals, and all that. And we're going to show you an alternative to what you're talking about. And I think that as this ecosystem that is Black Power Media, Black Mist Podcast, Hood Communists, all the programming coming out of AAPRP, all media coming out of all radical African leftist organizations in the US, we kind of have to commit to that standard, I think, of, are we attacking each other, or are we addressing the ideas? That's how we gotta move that forward, I think.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think before you came on, I was talking about how Cornel West, when he first got booted out, he had nowhere else to go, and he ended up at Black Agenda Report. But a lot of times the criticism of Cornel West about Obama even if people agree with Cornel West, they would say it was personal or it was vindictive. But as hard as Glen Ford went, I never got to know the feeling that it was personal. Like, to your point, it was just like he was, and he delivered it like that on everyone. So I mean, Cory Booker got it. What was the dude's name? Harold Ford, the one down in Tennessee, got it. Like, everybody got the same, like, zest that he had for, like, that's just the way he wrote his stuff. So I agree with you. Like, like I think like H. Rap Brown said, the debate concepts, you know, not individuals. You know, like we and yeah, I think it's the battle for ideas. You know, it might sound cliche, but it's real. And the best way to do that is to know how to structure an argument and know how to like you said, really speak to the sources, because we, you know, like we're talking about today, like we pass on, but these ideas, these contradictions, they stay here if we don't address them. Like, so it's not so debating, you know, we'll be gone at some point. So that argument doesn't really matter if it's between us as individuals, because we're not always going to be here. But the ideas and the things we're articulating, like those things stay with us. So I think that's a great point. You know, as far as just how that situates. So I guess question for y'all is just like, how do we continue to promote that? Because again, I think they held most of the time. There was times, you know, I think Bruce Dixon was kind of petty, but I'm saying like, but I'm saying generally, I think they held a fairly, you know, they held a principled line. I think Margaret Kimberly has always held a principled line. And I think generally, you know, that's how it works. But I'm just saying, like, how do we advance that type of engagement, even when we don't agree with each other? And anyone can take that question.
Yeah, I think we just gotta encourage struggle. Like we talked about that before. Like people are dead scared to struggle. They don't want to struggle ideas. But that's how we sharpen ideas. Like we have to have these conversations and have to raise these contradictions, because we're not always going to agree. But it does heighten the contradictions and it does heighten the analysis. But if we're not having these principal struggles, because they have to be principled, right? Because then it just all becomes reactionary and useless to us. But if we're not having these engagements with one another, or scared to engage these ideas, or like staking claim, like, or ideologically, right? Like everybody is taking their, like, oh no, we're over here, we're anarchists. Oh no, we're over here, we're Marxists. Like, you know, so long as we do that and avoid unity, or at least trying to unite at some point, you know, trying to have some sort of point of unity, we're not gonna succeed. So I think that's what we're trying to do at Hood Communists, especially, like, invite all these ideas. That's why we're always asking people, you know, submit. We want to talk about these things, because these are conversations that people are having. You know, and then if you don't like it, submit something and say you don't like it. You know, basically, like, because we want to invite these ideas and these conversations, because people are having these ideas and these conversations, but we have to actually struggle them out loud. We have to actually engage one another. And I think that so long as social media exists as a way to avoid that, we're just going to keep avoiding it, because nobody's actually directly engaging ideas, more so as like indirectly talking about one another. Yeah, so yeah.
Yeah, real quick for the next person to jump in. I know, I mean, even with the debate that we just tried to have, half the articles were about community control of the police on either side were published in Hood Communists. So I'm saying, whether people agree with that or not, like, I do appreciate that I could go there and find differing points of view, you know, and able to even list that in show notes. Like, that's the type of genealogy I think we have to leave behind. But whoever was next, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I mean, I think I agree with everything Erica said. I don't have anything more to add.
I would just add that, like, we gotta continue to tell the truth, but we also gotta be relevant, and we gotta, like, help people make the connections. Like, because I think that's something that the editorial staff at Black Agenda Report, whether you agree with them or you don't, when it comes to where you can go online to get, like, international analysis that made sense and was easy to digest or understand, that wasn't like, you know, some bullshit that you could get on CNN or whatever, that was happening. And I think as we continue to engage with each other, we got to understand we're not necessarily creating media for each other. I'm not making, you know, I'm not trying to publish articles or make media for you two Black, because I could just hit you on Instagram. We could talk about it. The goal is always supposed to be winning people to revolution. Like, we're supposed to be bringing more people in. And I do think that it requires a degree of like putting ego to the side, and making space for those debates that Erica just mentioned to unfold.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know, it's like, I guess like the principle thing is so important because, like you said, you can just get caught up in, trying to be the hardest Black left publication just for the 5 people who are Black leftists anyway, right? You know what I mean? Like, you get stuck trying to like posture, and I think that stuff doesn't really suit us well. But it's interesting, when we're talking about with the Obama thing, those are just very vivid years for me. And it's just interesting seeing how we're talking about a principled line, like a lot of people who was, I'm not going to call out a bunch of names because again, it's not about that, but it's a lot of folks who really like, was off Glen Ford, off Black Agenda Report, wasn't really messing with it. And a lot of people went for the bag. And I think what when you have time to watch something, when it's not just reactionary to an argument that drops, tomorrow, and you have a time to actually watch what happens, and you see like they were right about a lot of shit, So it's like when Bruce Dixon was what he said, Bernie was sheepdogging for the Democratic Party. I remember that a lot of people didn't like that, but I think that proved to be correct. So I'm just saying, like, a lot of what's been written, like, that's why we have to go back and like read some of this stuff. It's not enough to just read things when they come out, like it's best sometimes to go back and look at what did they say in 2013? What was people talking about? Like, what was the conversation? Like, that stuff matters because when we're looking at it 7-8 years later, we've lived through it and we can see like what really went down. But so it also teaches us not to be prisoners of the moment, so to speak, and just be so caught up in like what's right now, because we really don't know what's going to happen, so we have to trust the analysis.
Right. And I think that played out too in 2016, especially when people were doing I'm with her whole campaign. I think that Barr held that line as well because people were just coming out of the Obama myths, like a lot of people, especially with all of the uprising that was happening, all of the people that were being murdered by police continuously. So people were coming out of that fog, but then was getting like wheeled back into the Democratic Party, not dissimilar to how we saw 2020 play out. And, Barr continued to hold that line. And I think that was, necessary. And I think, like, again, that consistency has really played out and held up. Like, it's a lot of reasons why we can go back. Like, I can always say, like, Bruce Dixon was not wrong about Stacey Abrams. He was not wrong about Stacey Abrams. He called that. He's seen that. So, but you can always go back and see it. And it's clear to see it because, the reason why they held that sort of principle line is because of their ideology. And I think that we can't like take away from that. They have a certain understanding of dialectical materialism that allows them to hold that consistency where they can be like, see, yeah, this is going to happen this way because this is never changing. And also to their credit, which I think that we also kind of find the significance of in Hood Communists, is that all the co-founders were members of organizations. Like, they were all members of BAP. So, and that's significant because their work was not just about, reporting these things or getting people to connect the dots just on paper, but actually doing that, actively. So that's always important because I think that a lot of what's done on revolutionary African media comes from a place of organizing. Like when we say that independent media, it comes from a place of organizing. And I think that's very important to always highlight because, we believe in this organizing shit. We believe in the struggle and battles of ideas. We believe in winning people over as hard as that may be. And at times, we fuck up because you can't win everybody. And that's, but you're never going to know who you can and can't win if you don't at least try. And I think that the ability to try and to keep pushing through is with, Hood Communists. I can say that reflects in bar. Like always hold those ideas, always push these ideas through because they're not being showcased anywhere else. And so long as you bring these ideas to the forefront or attempt to, then more people can have a dialogue around it, whether or not they agree. We have to get those dialogues started, and we have to start struggling with ideas, and people have to start getting organized. And I think that that's a lot of what bar exemplified, because I don't think that I would have joined Black Alliance for Peace if not for Black Agenda Report. Like I wouldn't have known shit about it if not for Black Agenda Report.
Yeah. And I think I was listening. Organization is the weapon of the oppressed. Absolutely. And I think that, folks that are engaged in that struggle, that day-to-day organizing work, I think one of the basic lessons that you're going to learn if you're serious about it is to not get caught up in this bourgeois liberalist argument that, well, we have to say things that don't offend people. We have to tell the truth. That's what we have to do. Like, this is a big problem in this society. Your truth is your truth. 1 + 1 = 30. Well, that's your truth. No, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Like, try to learn how to figure out how to do math. That we have to raise that bar. And I just it's not like the thing that I use to keep me focused on that is I've been able to do a lot of really good work recently. The last couple of weeks I've been traveling around the country, and what I've been doing is working with these working class African, indigenous, sometimes European accomplished people, and they have these mutual aid programs, and these Proud Boys are attacking them for doing what they're doing. And so trying to help train these people how to defend themselves. In the one instance, 2 weeks ago, the Proud Boys showed up. So they had to use what we had trained on to, get these people out of there. And my point is that, people are struggling and suffering everywhere. Everybody's not just in this comfortable position where they can just, articulate whatever they want to come out of their individualistic head. So, we have to always be the basis that people want truth, because truth is what's going to set them free. Like, this stuff here is all based on lies. And I think, again, I agree with my comrade, Erica, like, you get that from engaging in the struggle day to day. That's how you get that. You don't get that from you can watch NBA all you want, but you're not going to understand how to execute the plays just by watching it on television. You have to engage it. Yeah.
That's the quote, Matt. We was
looking for that commentary quote.
But would you gonna keep going? I'm sorry. But like, I think with yeah, I mean, you're right. I wouldn't have heard about BAB. I wouldn't have heard about the Black is Back coalition. I wouldn't have heard about certain artists. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, man. Like, if I was just to make a list of ideas and as well as organizations I heard of just directly related through Black Agenda Report, I don't even know if I could list everything. Like, it's endless, because that was the thing I always liked when they did the radio reports, was that's when they would do the interviews. Like, when they do those interviews, like, it's usually people who are actively already doing something. So it's not just somebody not writing in reflection about something that already happened, but it's like talking to people on the ground. And then like we've also noted, Glen Ford just has an adult voice, so like that also just helps the listening ear. But yeah, like, they understood the struggle wasn't just like, when we say a battle of ideas, we're not talking about ideas in our heads or anything, right? Like, the episode we were going to release today was really about some of this. Like, we were talking about our methodology and how ideas come out of things, like they're material. They're not just like shit in the air somewhere. So like, the ideas matter for the sake of organizing. Like, the only reason we have an analysis is so we can go do something. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter, like, otherwise, then it does just get back to us arguing with individuals just because we want to argue as individuals. Like, we need an analysis so we can actually go out and change something, so we can go out and fight something. Like, and I think that's what publications like Hood Communist or BPM or our podcast, like, that's why I think if we're going to provide analysis, we're trying to provide analysis for that purpose, not just to have one so you could say you got the best analysis. Like, that's some silly shit to me. I don't understand why people do that. That's really corny anyway, you know. But I'm just saying, like, people do that. But I'm saying, like, ultimately, when I was going to Black Agenda Report when I was younger, and even today, I'm going there because I'm trying to understand the world that I'm in. I'm trying to understand what to do. You know, if I go to Hood Communist, I'm trying to understand what to do. Like, I got a Cuba interview tomorrow. Like, I'm gonna read Hood Communist so I can understand better how to conduct that interview, so we can figure out how to, you know, help people understand that situation, so we know what to do. It's not just for the fun of it, and I think sometimes that gets lost. You know, with these type of things, and we can just get caught up in who has the best analysis or whatever. I don't think that's actually the point. You know,
right.
Go ahead if you're going to go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think a very real world example of that played out on the Black Men's podcast when Glen Ford came on to talk. And when you guys got into the conversation about the Obama years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like it was very easy for people to tell him at the time, you're doing too much. Let this black man breathe. We need our first black president. This is a victory for us. And he was able to come back in 2020 and sit down with you to talk to you about how, if you go look at Pew Research data, if you go look at surveys, the 2 points that he made, the first one being that Africans in the United States were so disillusioned by an Obama presidency that in the middle of an economic crisis, we were filling out surveys and telling people we were doing the best we ever did. And we were the only people saying that in surveys. And
yeah,
then
more than white people, just for people who don't know the survey, more than white people. And if I remember correctly, I think we were talking about this, Mac. Like, if I remember correctly, like, black people, most of the wealth that we had gained between like 1983 and 2007 was like wiped out in the recession.
In
right?
the recession, we lost it. We lost everything.
Yeah.
And was sitting in these people's face, writing down on a piece of paper, answering on the telephone. I'm doing the best I ever did. Like, that's crazy. Then the other thing that he brought up was how in Obama's second presidency, black people favored airstrikes in Syria, which was like a display for the first time of African people in the United States taking a pro-war position. That, when I heard that, I was like, that is fucking terrifying. But it wasn't, but the noise he was making, that interview for me goes to prove that it wasn't just the analysis. The analysis was trying to warn us about something that was coming. And then that thing, the prophecy fulfilled itself. Okay, so here we are in 2020 and 2021. We can't play that same game with Kamala Harris. We already know what's up. Erica already hit them on the blog and told them, you got this Caribbean Indian woman, Southcom. That's what we need to be focused on, the United States. Southcom. You know what I mean? We got analysis that says don't fall for the squad shit. I know y'all love this group of daring young women standing up to Nancy Pelosi. Don't fall for it. All of that is a model based on things that we see and we learn. We see and we learn. You apply the learnings. That's what the analysis is supposed to do.
Right. Like, and that goes like what I said earlier. Like, I don't think I would have even been able to define or even think of the concept of identity reductionism if Black leadership class did not already exist as a framework to build upon. Right, because I never even heard of that before. But then once you start seeing how these sort of people are being used, you see that when you see the sort of people being used with it, you see how they're being used. And I think that's what identity reductionism like picks apart, like exactly the ways they're being used. But I think that without Black misleadership class, I wouldn't have even have identified that it is a group of these people that are moving this way, especially the CBC, because like he used to go to CBC body.
Yeah, they gave those ratings to the CBC. Yeah.
Right. And then also in 2016, like Barr got accused of Russiagate the same way. And then what's his name? Tanashi even I think jumped on board with that, with the because I think he had something for the Atlantic about Trump being the first white president or something like that. That article, Tanashi Coates. And,
and then CBS responded to that piece in Black Agenda Report.
Right. Right. So yeah, and then right soon after they were accused of being Russians. But again, a lot of those things are not dissimilar to what we're finding ourselves dealing with now. So I think I'm pretty like prepared for for being called a genocide supporter and such. Primarily because I see how holding these lines, the reactions that you get from holding these lines.
Yeah, I mean they kind of like it's still a point now where like in you were talking about Mac in that interview, like the when he talked about Kamala Harris, like we're probably gonna post that show at some point, but he talked about Kamala Harris and that's another thing on a little lighter note. Glen Ford was actually really funny too.
Very
like,
funny. Very funny.
Like so he was talking about like in the interview, he was like difference between Kamala Harris and Obama is like Kamala Harris isn't even a talented politician. You know, he was just like he was like she's gonna break out one of her cackling laughs, and then we're gonna all realize that she's a fraud. Like but like
and then y'all played the laugh.
Yeah. So it's like, but yeah, it's like you can. If you're really studying what they're saying, again, if you're not looking at it as had them hating on individuals, you can just kind of see the same process playing out. Like we've kind of seen this movie before. So with Kamala Harris, like we can see, or Kamala, excuse me, we can see the movie. We've seen this movie before. Like this is not that much different. Like some things are different, but a lot of it's not that much different. I think a lot of that did train, my analysis, just how when I look at stuff, like all those years under Obama, like you can't trot out a black politician and I'm gonna even slightly be moved at this point. Like, it doesn't matter. You could bring Malcolm from the dead and run him for president, and I'm still not gonna be moved, just because of and just partially due to how they used to break stuff down. Because like they really do just like set it up for you. And I think that's the stuff that people miss. Like you said, Mac, they're telling you that this is coming. I mean, Bruce Dixon was early on Obama, like, because he knew him out of Chicago. So, I think he wrote about Obama when he ran against what was the brother's name?
Bobby Rush.
Yeah, Bobby Rush. Yeah.
Mm.
He was writing about him, like he was talking about it going all the way back to then. So yeah, I mean, I think that the analysis is just vital, and especially when it's connected to actual work on the ground.
Yeah, I think if we look back at when Malcolm was speaking, when he was still in the Nation of Islam in the 50s, he talked, the videos are still on YouTube and they're available, but he would talk a lot about, Europeans. He would talk about how they look, their long dog nose. And like people can look at that and say, well, wow, that's anti-white. But that's not what he was doing. What he was doing was trying to talk to us and help us deconstruct this perception we have that Europeans are superior to us. And that's very important. So when you all are, that's what I thought of when you're talking about, this deconstruction of this Obama mystique. That's very important to engage that with our people, so our people can understand, like, there's other ways to look at things other than just this, sandwich narrative that's constantly given to us, like that's the only thing that exists. I mean, we need that. It's very critical that we get that. And I think anybody that's out here trying to provide that for us is doing an invaluable service to our ability to, break free from our chains.
Right. And I think even Dr. King said a true leader doesn't rule by consensus. He rules by conscience, or something of that nature. So to, like you said earlier about telling the truth, like you gotta, the truth is on record. You tell the truth, as opposed to trying to say something just because everybody's going to like it. I mean, it's just similar to how things work, especially under capitalism, where you follow trends. But it's funny, even under capitalism, a lot of times, like, let's say in music or something, the people who follow the trends don't even last that long. So like even under capitalism, a lot of times the people who just stay steady doing their own thing tend to have a longer career, which is hilarious if without going deep into that subject. But I'm just saying, like, telling the truth, has longevity to it. It's why we can sit here and have an episode like this, because, Glen Ford wasn't just writing shit so it was hot for the moment. It was the think piece that got shared on the internet about, whatever random celebrity or whatever, right? Like, it wasn't, he didn't write those pieces. They wrote other things. So, like, yeah, I don't know how much longer y'all want to go. I mean, we're at an hour. So I'm gonna just let y'all like share some more words and we can keep going. If not, we can get off here. Because we didn't really have a lot of plan. We just wanted to share some words, to pay our respects, so to speak.
The only thing I want to say is, in honoring and continuing to try to honor Glen Ford's legacy, I just feel like everybody who out here trying to do this need to adapt the motto, fuck these people, tell the truth.
Yeah, and I would like to, like, I had a comrade from Paka that posted today that, the beauty of Glen Ford's, I guess, the legacy of Glen Ford, and with him being an ancestor now, is that we have the ability to create 1,000 more. And I think that that's what we need to really emphasize, that, there's already a blueprint that's established where we can organize our people to be as sharp and as sophisticated in their analysis as Glen Ford was. And that's what we hope to do with Hood Communists and all of these, outlets that we have, even with the radio show, even with our Telegram PE. We really try to extend that idea that we can continue to create in the models that Glenn and Bruce have set for us.
Yeah, just in honor of brother Glen Ford, I'll just the elder in Ghana years ago when I was there, I was trying to do some action in the community that I didn't know if I should be doing it, and she looked at me and she said, "Boy, even a dead fish can go with the current. Don't be a dead fish."
Yeah, that's facts. That's facts. Yeah, I think we all got that lesson. Because like I said, the truth has longevity that that clout chasing just doesn't have. And the truth lives out. And I think for me, I mean, like I said, I could say so much more about what I've learned. I'm sure we all could from Black Agenda Report. But for me, like the analysis, the fact finding. The willingness to go out on an island like we talked about at the beginning, like those things are tried and true, and they'll stick with me. So I wouldn't have been an artist named Too Black probably without Black Agenda Report. I wouldn't have been. There definitely wouldn't be a Black Miss podcast without Black Agenda Report. It was an honor to remember reading this shit in high school, and then to actually at one point be published and then even interviewed by Black Agenda Report. Like that's an honor that I'm glad I was able to actually speak with Glen Ford before he passed. I remember when he was on our episode, I told him how he helped me with a lot of my struggles in college with a lot of the Negro liberals. And he said something, he was like, I'm sorry if I contributed to your marginalization. Because like I said, he was a funny guy, but I was like, no, I really did appreciate him, and I always appreciate him. So rest in peace, rest in power. Thank y'all for coming on here.
Yeah. I wanted to say that, sending so much love to Margaret Kimberly. We really do love you, Margaret, so much. In this moment, we remember you right now, still holding it down. So just want to say that.
Yeah, love to Margaret Kimberly, love to the whole Black Agenda Report family, love to Glen Ford's family. I'm sure there'll be more tributes and dedications and more information coming out. But we wanted to just come on here and pay our respects. So if y'all got anything else to say, go ahead. Otherwise, I'm good. So all right, so yeah, appreciate it. Thank you everybody who came out to listen. And once again, rest in power, Glen Ford.
Peace, y'all.
nother state. I'm trying to eat down a whole nother plate. Seem like my homies was stuck in the hood, I just told them be safe in the state.